As a boy, he learned to shoot. He dreamed of becoming a U.S. Marine all his life and entered the military in 1959 when he was only 17 years old. Hathcock was by then an accomplished marksman, winning the Wimbledon Cup shooting championship in 1965, the year before he went to Vietnam and changed the face of the American war forever. In 1966, he was commissioned into the Army as a military police officer, but immediately volunteered for combat and was soon transferred to the 1st Marine Division Sniper Platoon stationed on Hill 55 south of Da Nang. It was here that Hathcock earned the nickname White Feather, because he always wore a white feather on his cap, daring the North Vietnamese to spot him, and where he achieved the status of the Vietnam War's deadliest sniper on missions. It sounds like they were taken from the pages of Marvel Comics. Fight in Elephant Valley. The work of Hathcock and his comrades in Elephant Valley is a prime example of how a small group of snipers can massacre a vastly superior enemy force. Carlos and his partner Burke managed to destroy almost an entire enemy company in a few days. The ambush of North Vietnamese soldiers took place in a rice field near the Cade River, an important route that connects the northern and southern parts of the country, and was used by the guerrillas to deliver military supplies. Hathcock and Burke located 80 enemy soldiers, mostly recruits. They killed the officer first. His death caused panic among the inexperienced soldiers. The few who tried to escape were immediately killed by Hathcock's bullets. For efficiency, the arrows constantly changed location. The only thing that the Vietnamese fighters could do was lie down and not stick out. I had to endure the scorching sun. The Vietnamese fulfilled their natural needs for themselves. The snipers kept the enemy in this state for 5 days and decided to retreat when supplies ran out. But before that, artillery was called in, which finished off the surviving partisans. White Feather is on the hunt. One of the achievements of Carlos Hathcock was the hunt for Apache, the commander of the Vietnamese partisans. She was famous for her cruelty and torture of American prisoners, up to castration and cutting off the eyelids. For U.S. soldiers, she became a hated enemy. Hathcock could see through the scope of his rifle what the woman was doing to the prisoners. In the hunt, he was assisted by his old commander, Land, who was developing a plan to hunt down the enemy. The first attempt failed due to poor planning of the operation. The Americans almost fell into an ambush and were forced to retreat. The next attempt was more successful. Since the positions of Land and Hathcock were close to the enemy, the captain decided to call fire on himself. The shelling sowed panic among the Vietnamese. Apache also lost control and ran from the explosions towards the snipers. Hathcock had only to pull the trigger. After this incident, the enemies nicknamed Carlos White Feather. Hathcock used for operations not only the usual sniper rifle. The most unusual case is associated with the use of the M2 machine gun. Carlos, using a machine gun and an 8-fold sniper scope, shot a 12-year-old boy at a distance of 2 kilometers, who was carrying weapons and ammunition on a bicycle. The first shot destroyed the vehicle. Carlos hoped that the boy would get scared and run away, but he rushed to gather supplies. After that, Hathcock shot him. He knew that partisans often use children as saboteurs, and sometimes they are more dangerous than adult soldiers. After that, the Vietnamese opened a real hunt for him. Painted portraits spread among the partisans, and $30,000 were offered for the head of an American. However, Carlos continued to work in Vietnam, completing 2 more extremely dangerous tasks: sniper duel and hunt for the general. Despite the successes of American snipers, the Vietnamese did not think to give in. Once Hathcock received a message that not far from Hill 55, where the American base was located, a group of partisans was destroyed, but one of the detachment remained alive and continued his work. This was important because even one enemy with a sniper rifle was a big threat. Hathcock and his constant assistant Burke decided to track him down. This survivor was known by the nickname Cobra. Rumors attributed to him inhuman cunning and vitality. He lived alone in the jungle, catching snakes and rabbits with his bare hands for food. It's hard to say how much truth there is in this, but on the last day of the chase, Hathcock almost died. His group noticed a strange gleam ahead, as if someone was shining in their faces. Carlos immediately fired in that direction. A little later, it turned out that he killed Cobra by hitting the optical sight of his rifle. The last task was difficult for Hathcock. He needed to quietly get to the residence of the commander of one of the divisions of North Vietnam and eliminate him. Carlos biography researcher Charles Henderson, in his work, The Marine Corps Sniper, characterized this operation as suicidal. The soldier himself took it as such, so he wrote a farewell letter to his wife in advance in case he did not return. Hathcock was dropped off at an unknown location. There he had to use all the skills of a sniper to get unnoticed to the old mansion in which the general was. The sniper had several problems. Constant patrols of the enemy. To get to the target, it was necessary to crawl, constantly listening so as not to collide with enemy soldiers. There were no trees or bushes on the territory where the general was located, although Hathcock could use grass that reached a height of up to half a meter as a shelter. To get there unnoticed, the fighter crawled for about a kilometer. The hardest part was waiting for the general. The sniper spent almost 4 days guarding the enemy. The operation nearly failed when a bamboo snake decided to bite Carlos. Hathcock shot the general in the morning. The whole operation took a minute, after which the sniper fled into the jungle, where he was later evacuated. Last trip and return home. After the suicide mission, Hathcock became a legend for the Marines and a symbol for the American Army, but his service ended tragically. During a trip in an armored personnel carrier, a sniper and his platoon were blown up by a mine. Despite his injuries, Carlos rushed to save his people. He succeeded, but the burns covered about 40% of his body. In addition, Carlos suffered from pneumonia, which slowed down the recovery process. Despite severe wounds, Hathcock continued to be listed as a Marine. He could not participate in operations and became a firearms instructor. But the work caused difficulties. Due to burns, he had to avoid heat and cold, as well as wear clothes that almost completely hid the body. Carlos spent a lot of energy to stay in the Marine Corps, but his health rapidly deteriorated and he was soon diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. In 1979, the American legend was declared disabled and retired. Pains did not cease to torment Carlos. At times he fainted. The difficult physical condition also led to family scandals. Hathcock, who was a military man to the bone, had difficulty getting used to a new civilian life. Carlos found a new occupation for himself, which partially resembled his previous job, fishing. This occupation saved him from depression. In 1998, the film Saving Private Ryan was released, dedicated to the evacuation of an American soldier from the front of World War II. There is a scene in the picture where an American sniper gets into the scope of a German shooter. There is a legend that this episode is inspired by an event that happened to Hathcock. Despite leaving the Marine Corps, Hathcock's colleagues did not forget about him. His comrades constantly visited him, and he was often taken to sniper competitions. However, the disease progressed, and on February 22, 1999, the veteran died. According to official figures, he shot 93 enemies during his service, remaining one of the most effective snipers in U.S. military history.